Hi there, welcome to another session. Today I am going to call this one fight or flight mode, and it's probably going to be one of the bite-sized words, a shorter word, just to encourage you. And you know what it is when we get into fight or flight mode, when we're faced with a challenge and we either want to stand and fight or run. And so I'm going to look at it a little bit differently, that we have an opportunity to either fight or fly, but in a different way. Just hear me out. So I have realized that a lot of you have, if you've flown on any kind of plane and you want to take your electronic devices, that they say put your device into flight mode for takeoff and landing. So the reason they do that is, if you do not put your device into flight mode, in other words, switch it off, your device is going to spend a lot of time searching for a connection to the internet and interrupting the signals that the pilot needs to fly that plane effectively. And so your device is searching around to try and connect with something. And this is what happens with you and I when we don't resist the lies of the enemy. If we don't put our brains into flight mode, the enemy comes, the opposition comes with a whole lot of thoughts, because you know the battle is in your mind. The enemy comes with a lot of ideas that oppose what God has promised you, or they are not what the scriptures say, or they challenge your identity or your authority or the faith that you have in something God has said to you. And if you don't get into flight mode and switch off those lies that are going on in your brain, you're going to connect to them, and the battle begins in your thinking, and you begin to fall into the trap of believing what the enemy says instead of what God says. So this is how we get into flight mode in the kingdom. It is, it says here, it's Isaiah 40. Isaiah 40 verse 29, but I'm going to read it in the Amplified Version. It says this: He gives power to the faint and weary, and to him who has no might he increases strength, in brackets, causing it to multiply and making it to abound. When God gives you strength, because you have no might, you can't do it on your own without him, it becomes the strength of God that he gives to you. He doesn't just give you a little bit. It says causing it to multiply and making it to abound. It's more than you need. Even youths shall faint and be weary, and young men shall feebly stumble and fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord, this is the getting into flight mode, switching off what the enemy's saying, waiting on God and hearing what he has said. Those who wait for the Lord, who expect, look for, and hope in him, shall change and renew their strength and power. You're going to be transformed. Your thinking is going to be changed. You're going to be transformed by the renewing of your mind. They shall change and renew their strength and power. They shall lift their wings and mount up. This is God's kind of flight mode. Close to God, as eagles mount up to the sun. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint or become tired. Isn't that amazing? So if you make a choice to switch your brain into flight mode and say, God, instead of trying to connect and trying to reason with my natural understanding what is going on and figuring out what is you and what is the devil, I'm going to wait on you. And you know the whole thing about the eagle, it says here, they'll mount up close to God as eagles mount up to the sun. The eagle takes its prey as high as it can, because it knows that the enemy cannot fight up there at the altitude that the eagle can. Another thing that the eagle does is it lives high up on the peaks of cliffs. It has a higher life, to have a higher perspective. And then it says they'll run and not be weary, they'll walk and not faint or become tired. Don't you need that in today's life? the challenges of life, the everyday, the things you have to do every day that seem to be draining or tiring you out. And here it says, they will not be weary. They'll run and not be weary. They'll walk and not faint or become tired. Every single one of us needs that. And it's an invitation for you and I, that when you're in this fight or flight mode, do I stand here and fight the enemy? Yes, sometimes you have to fight the enemy with a declaration that comes out of your mouth. But the starting place is to get into flight mode. Switch off the lies of the enemy, wait on God, and then begin to say what he gives you to say. Begin to mount up with wings like that eagle, and so you find your strength in him. So be encouraged with that today. Let me just read you something from day 6. I'll read you a little bit more. It says here, he loves to bring us to a place of realization that in spite of us, he uses us. It's his power after all. If we want to play it safe, we will never experience what it feels like to soar with the Spirit. We will also never learn from our mistakes and grow if we don't have opportunities to make mistakes. God enjoys stepping into situations that are humanly impossible. He takes delight when we need him to help us. Growth doesn't happen in the comfortable places, but we're never forced to step outside of the places that make us feel safe. He still loves us right there, but we'll miss out on the extraordinary and the miraculous interventions if we stay there. Choose to do something that takes you outside your comfort zone. Perhaps it's to pray for someone you don't know, or forgive someone you need to forgive. Ask for guidance and obey the simple instructions. Growth is always good. Find the broad place that God has for you today. And so here's the scripture of the day. Psalm 118 verse 5. I called on the Lord in distress. The Lord answered me and set me in a broad place. And here's the word of the day out of Imagine. Comfort zone. A settled method of working that requires little effort and yields only barely acceptable results. That's from Imagine, the Dreamer's Diary. So that was day 6 to read, meditate on for the rest of the day. That if you want to stay in the comfort zone, you're going to miss out on the miraculous. You're going to miss out on finding this place in God where you renew your strength and power. That you mount up close to God, you run and you don't grow tired. So be encouraged with that today. Get into flight mode. Switch off the lies of the enemy. Get into the presence of God and get into flight mode. So be encouraged with that today.